All right, let's talk about the film The Life of Chuck, which was written. The screenplay was written by Mike Flanagan and it was directed by Mike Flanagan. It was based on a short story that was written by Stephen King. I listened to that on audiobook before I watched the movie, and I really enjoyed the short story a lot, although I was kind of interested in how it was going to play for a movie, and I'm going to be a little vague about how I talk about this before we get into spoilers, just because this is a story that is told in a very unconventional way. Maybe I'll just leave it at that for now. It is not telling it a story in a very straightforward manner, and because of that, I think some people are going to really enjoy that aspect of the film. I think some people could be a little bit turned off by that aspect of the film, but it doesn't just give you what a film traditionally will give you because of that. So what can I even say about this without talking about the spoilers? Well, I can talk about the general feelings of this movie. And first, what I would say is that I think that some of the promotion might make you think that this is like a Hallmark movie-esque film. And don't get me wrong, I think there are parts of it that can look like that. I certainly think like the cinematography makes it look that way, but I think that you can maybe go in with a bit of the wrong idea if you're seeing this. There is very much some darker themes throughout this film. Like I said, it goes in very unique ways. You could almost argue that this is a film that goes in some art housey type ways, and again, part of it is just the structure of how it was made by the story itself, by Stephen King, who I think deserves a lot of credit for this ultimate work of art. There is a wide cast of characters, many of whom I did not even realize were going to be in this movie. A lot of, it's that person. I didn't realize they were in this movie. It's him. Oh, it's her. A lot of that going on. I will say, not all of the acting I was crazy about. In fact, there was moments where some of the lines felt a little bit stilted, and I almost sometimes felt like people were acting in different movies. I think specifically in certain parts in the beginning of the film, and also kind of on the last third of the movie, when you're watching it, the last third of the movie, I felt like there was a bit of, sometimes it did kind of cross into the Hallmarky territory a bit, I felt like, which again is not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. There were two specific sequences that I think kind of make this movie worth watching. There is a extended dance sequence, that's all I will say, that I really enjoyed, and also a sequence early on where people are looking up at the stars, and we'll just leave it at that. Again, I'll get into spoilers in a second, but I think for those couple of sequences, this is definitely something that is worth watching. And again, just to kind of talk about the general theme of the movie, which is in many ways kind of about the meaning of life, which is a really big thing to talk about, and it's really kind of a difficult subject to tackle. I do think it had some thought-provoking aspects of that. And so because of that, even though I do have some critiques that I feel like I need to get into spoilers to talk about, I don't know if I fully loved the ending of this movie. I guess I don't know if I fully got the emotions that it was trying to get out of me in those moments, which we'll talk about in just a second. I do think this is still definitely a film worth watching because of the positives that this gives you. So some really great feelings that this movie will make you feel. I am giving this a 7 out of 10. That is my rating. We'll get into spoilers just real quick. I will also mention I do have a Letterboxd if you want to follow me there. The link is in the description below for that, so you can follow me on Letterboxd if that seems like your kind of thing. It's just Jackson Kruger is my name if you want to look me up. But yeah, let's get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1, spoiler talk. So okay, to get more into the plot, which I didn't want to do if you haven't seen it, because that's part of the fun, it tells the story essentially in 3 acts that move backwards chronologically. It tells the act 3, which is told at the beginning, is in my opinion the best part of this movie, of the the story in general, of the kind of post-apocalyptic nature of what's going on, and just kind of the terror of the universe ending and what that means. Like, what does it mean to get to the end of all of this, and just kind of how matter of fact it all felt was just such a cool thing and such a unique thing, and then the mystery of who is Chuck, what's going on here. Thanks, Chuck. And it's played for humor at parts, but then it also can kind of be played for horror later on. And you see with the roller skating girl, who you see again later on in the movie, which I almost felt like when we would see the callbacks to the characters from the first part of the movie, Act 3. When you see them again, it almost is like the constant reminder of what's to come, of the fact that, death is ultimately, just around the corner. The sequence that I mentioned earlier, the stars going out sequence, and kind of how, just kind of how terrifying that is. And there's something just so fascinating about what would happen if you were looking up, all of the lights are out, so now you can see all the stars, and you start to see the stars go out one by one. How would that make you feel? It is just so interesting. Act 2 I really enjoyed as well. This was the dance sequence that I thought was, there's a couple good dance sequences, but this is the one that I just thought was so fun. And again, I think for Stephen King, one of his strengths as a writer is how he comes up with these little details to make you really kind of like these characters. And you could have so easily made this where it's just about Chuck, but the fact that you added the characters, and I think Flanagan did a really smart thing of leaving a lot of those details in with voiceover narration. It just lets the scene just kind of feel so much more like complete, as opposed to if it was just about Chuck. We would have still gotten his feelings on it, but I don't know if the scene as a whole fully works unless we get those other details that were in the short story as well. So I thought that was really good. I also really liked the sort of the ending where he's kind of walking by, and you hear about what ultimately happens to him, but then as he's walking, there's the line where it says, essentially, a moment like that is what makes life worth living. You also see the lights turn back on, kind of, I think, juxtaposing the first part of the film where the lights all turned off. Now it's turning on, making it almost like life is still going and worth living. There was also one other line that I remember. It's also in the story, in the short story, but I didn't think about it until I watched the movie. But there's a line where the narrator says about the weekend, like everyone's looking forward to the weekend, and that feeling is always better than the weekend itself, which kind of feels like a metaphor for this movie, right? Of the looking forward to the life ahead of you is sometimes better than the life ahead of you itself. As I said, I think the final act, which was Act 1, was probably my least favorite. I still think there's some good stuff there. I don't know. I just feel like, kid acting is always just not quite as believable as adult acting. I think there was, they asked a lot of the young boy who was tasked with playing young Chuck. That's Benjamin Pajak, maybe how you say his name. He had to do a lot. He had to dance. He had to, do a lot of the acting. I'm not going to say he was horrible or anything, but just, it felt a little bit more stilted. It felt a little bit more Hallmarky, like I said. Still some great moments in this, but I do think that while the dance sequence really worked and the ending of Act 2 really worked for me, while the stars going out sequence fully worked for me, that got, big emotional, had a huge emotional impact for me, I think the actual ending of this just kind of left me wanting more, and not in a good way. Because again, part of the, point of it is that, that's it. Like, you're waiting now. There is nothing else there. But I think that was supposed to maybe hit me harder than it actually did for me personally. So while I really enjoyed a lot of this, I don't know if I fully got the emotional satisfaction out of the film that it was trying to create for me. I've also talked about this a little bit already, but kind of the again, I called it like Hallmark-y type of cinematography, which I don't know if that's totally fair. I didn't really think it bothered me in the first two sections, so Act 3 and Act 2. For whatever reason, in the final act, I was just like, this doesn't fully, maybe just because it was a kid there, but I'm like, I don't know if this fully works for me. So little things like that. I will say, great casting here of getting 3 people that I feel like I totally believed were the same person. Part of that is, the hairstyle and the glasses to kind of help sell that illusion, but that fully worked for me. There's also a very strong score that's gonna, I think, work for some people and not work for other people. It is constantly going throughout this film and creating a specific type of feeling, and I think it mostly worked for me, so I liked it, but I could see some people maybe being a bit more turned off by it. But yeah, as a whole, again, this is just a really unique story and a fascinating one to watch, and I'm just glad that a film like this exists. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on The Life of Chuck. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.